So one of the main reasons we're told why the first temple was destroyed was, first of all, the Jewish people were misbehaving. But a real issue was they were not listening to the tochacha, the criticism being given to them by God through his prophets, specifically Jeremiah the prophet, who is, to use a modern expression, the real party pooper of this period of time. The Jewish people are misbehaving. They're hyper-focusing on the wrong things. And Jeremiah's message is get your act together. Submit to Babylon. Remember, the Babylonians are the great world power. Israel's a vassal state of Babylon. He's telling the last three kings, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah, don't listen to false prophets. Accept the criticism. Don't rebel. If you rebel, the consequences will be disastrous for the Jewish people. But unfortunately, we know they don't listen. And right in back of us here is great visual evidence and archaeological evidence of exactly that mistake brought to light by archaeologists. What you see here is the remains of an upper-class Jewish home. It's called Beit Achiel, destroyed. It existed for hundreds of years. It was destroyed by the Babylonians after almost a 3-year siege of Jerusalem, which led to the destruction of the city, the destruction of the first temple, and the exile of the population to what is Babylon, which is what is Iraq today. But below my feet, speaking of graphic evidence of exactly the topic we're talking about, down below, Yigal Shiloah, the archaeologist, digging in the early years of excavation here in the 70s, discovered about 4 dozen boule. Boule were small clay seals used to seal documents that were written in parchment rolled up with a clay seal. And these clay seals were a way just like we have of sealing an envelope today. And on these seals are the names of the people who were the owners of the documents. Most of these people are unknown, but occasionally we find the names of people actually mentioned in the Bible. And one of those names on one of those seals, unfortunately the documents were burned in the destruction of Jerusalem, but clay in a fire hardens, so the seal survived for 2,500 years. One of those names is Gemaryahu ben Shaphan. And if we look in Jeremiah chapter 36, this is the third to last king of Judah, who's not a good guy. And Jeremiah is the prophet, and he's trying to get the Jewish people to listen. So he will write a scroll, a prophetic scroll of warning, because bad prophecy is a warning. If you listen, it won't happen. The difference between good and bad prophecy is bad prophecy is conditional. It can be avoided. Good prophecy will always happen. But remember that name, Gemaryahu ben Shaphan. So in Jeremiah chapter 36, it says, verse 8, Baruch the son of Neriah did everything as Jeremiah the prophet had commanded him, to read the words of Hashem from the book, in the temple of Hashem. And we skip it to verse 10. And Baruch read the words of Jeremiah from the book in the temple of Hashem, in the chamber of Gemaryahu ben Shaphan, the scribe, in the upper courtyard at the opening of the new gate. What you're seeing here is Eicha, the book of Lamentations, version 1, that was written by Jeremiah at the time of the third to last king as a warning: accept the criticism, do tshuva, don't rebel. What happens? Gemaryahu, who's Jeremiah's scribe, we find his seal right down below our feet. That scroll is burned, and the tochacha, the criticism, is ignored. It is rewritten again by Jeremiah, who keeps screaming out his message to the leadership of the Jewish people, to the king and the population, for the next 2 kings. But unfortunately, the Jewish people reject over and over again the criticism. It eventually leads to the Jewish people listening to false prophets, rebelling, triggering a violent and huge Babylonian reaction, where Nebuchadnezzar sends his general Nebuzaradan to besiege the city and then destroy Jerusalem and the first temple and exile the population. The lesson we learn about the importance of accepting criticism, not just from prophets, but always being open to change and to be better, is absolutely significant. And the consequences that we learn of avoiding accepting criticism and not listening and not growing can be devastating on an individual level and a collective level. That's what we have here, and let's hope we learn that lesson so in the future we never have to repeat those mistakes.
Welcome from the Gush. A lot of people are thinking about and visiting Ir David. Gush Etzion is in the lands of Yehuda. You can see Yerushalayim in the background. I'm sitting on a mountain overlooking the route that possibly David HaMelech and many others took as they ascended to Yerushalayim, to Ir David, to the Beis HaMikdash, or to Yerushalayim, the Makom HaMikdash. One of the most delicate parts of our midos and our functioning with other people is the world of tochacha. On the one hand, rebuke and critique is important to change new ideas, new perspectives. On the other hand, not always that easy. Not always that easy. And sadly, both the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash fell because of failures of tochacha, failures of rebuke. In the first Beis HaMikdash, no one was listening. Total obstinacy, an iron wall, brazenness, refusal. How many times did Yirmiyah rail against the iniquities in Yeshaya, and they forecast the doom in Yechezkel? And those are just the three primary Nevi'im who spoke about the impending galus. And somehow people just didn't listen. It's easier not to listen. It's easier to find people who affirm who you are, who ratify who you are. It's better to find people who challenge who you are, who make you uncomfortable, who blow the whistle, who get in your face and call you to higher ground. And in the first Beis HaMikdash, they didn't just refuse to listen, but there was violence directed at Nevi'im. Yehoiakim murders Uriah. Zechariah is murdered. Zechariah Navi, the other Zechariah, is murdered in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos, on Yom Kippur. We read about this. One of the Kinas on Tisha B'Av, and Uriah is frightened to death when Hashem dispatches him to deliver, the winds are blowing in the gush, to deliver some nevuah, and ultimately he's arrested and his life is threatened. Violence, as Jews we know, sometimes violence is directed against people who challenge you. The Jews are the mashgichim of the world. We deliver Musar to the world. We challenge the world morally. We challenge the world theologically, and for that sometimes we're hated. Where did this obstinacy and confidence come from? There was a supreme overconfidence in the fact that we were in the land of Israel with the Beis HaMikdash. Pasuk in Yirmiyah, Perek Zayin, Al tiftechu lachem al divrei hasheker. Don't listen to the false prophets. Many false prophets were sure them nothing was wrong. Lamor, don't say, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem. Fascinating. The word Heichal Hashem is repeated 3 times. We have the Beis HaMikdash, we have Nevuah, we have supernaturalism. We're invulnerable, we're invincible. Sometimes you can be too close, too confident, too much swagger. Another pasuk in Yirmiyah Perek Chaf Beis, Eretz, Eretz, Eretz. Shimi, Devar Hashem. Again, they was just so confident in being in the Eretz, Eretz, Eretz. Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem. We have to be careful about that today in Eretz Yisrael. We feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has restored us. We have confidence in that, but sometimes we have too much confidence and we don't check ourselves enough. We don't question enough. We don't have enough Yirah Shamayim. Second Beis HaMikdash fell not because of too little tochacha, but too much tochacha. Very ideological age, very passionate, a lot of ideas swirling around humanity. Stukian, Prushim, Tarshib Alpeh, the Greek dynasty, the Roman dynasty, people starting to think about their lives, Christianity ultimately. A lot of thought, a lot of thinking, a lot of positions, a lot of opinions. It's great, that's how you formulate your identity. But you can't become too passionate to the point that you can't accept other truths, you can't imagine, especially within obviously Judaism. You can't accept other truths, you can't allow other truths, you can't make place in your heart for other truths, and people were just so vigilant and so zealous and so hypercritical and so free to offer their advice that it led to a fissuring of society. Social fabric was torn asunder, infighting, civil war, internecine struggle, lack of unity, and it causes hatred. Continuation of the pasuk, how do you deliver Musar and Tochacha without creating hate and division and strife? So the first Beis HaMikdash fell because of too little Tochacha being accepted. The second Beis HaMikdash fell because of too much Tochacha and the hatred that was engendered. Sometimes you have to know what to say, and sometimes you have to know when not to say it. And it's where it says in Yevamos Kashem Shem Mitzvah Lomer Davar Hanishmar Kach Mitzvah Lomer Davar She'eno Nishmar. Just like you should say and object at the right time, you also have to be silent. And Mitzvah Hashem, we should find that balance between accepting input from people who challenge us, providing our views, listening to other people's views, but in a way that's harmonious and in a way that pollinates rather than divides and separates.